Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to this momentous ceremony, the conferral of the Honorary Doctorate of Frederick University to Professor Jeffrey Sachs, University Professor at Columbia University, President of the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, and one of the foremost voices in global sustainable development. I would like to invite the Rector of Frederick University, Professor George Demosthenes, to deliver the welcome address.
Dear Minister, dear Deputy Attorney General, dear Member of the Parliament, Your Excellencies, dear President of the Government Advisory Board, dear former Attorney General and Honorary Doctor of our University, dear President of the Sachs Agency, Quality Assurance and Accreditation Clarification, distinguished guests, dear students, ladies and gentlemen. We are proud and honored to be awarding today an honorary doctorate to Professor Jeffrey P. Sachs, University Professor at Columbia University and President of the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network. Professor Sachs joins our distinguished list of honorary doctors. Today, we have confirmed 5 honorary doctorates within our schools, and today marks the first time we are awarding an honorary doctorate confirmed by Frederick University as an institution. The special occasion coincides with the landmark anniversary of our academic community. This year, we proudly celebrate 60 years of continuous contribution to Cyprus' educational landscape, culminating with the establishment of Frederick University. Since its founding, the university has charted an exceptionally successful course, establishing itself as one of the largest and most esteemed universities in Cyprus. Today, we honor Professor Sachs for his outstanding contributions to global sustainable development and his effective interventions in addressing the complex challenges faced by humanity. His work and goals are closely aligned with our own vision and strategy for sustainability. Recognizing our critical role in supporting the achievement of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, we have embedded the SDGs at the heart of our strategic plan 2022-2030. Sustainability is now a central pillar across all dimensions of our university: our teaching, research, governance, daily operations, and our engagement with society. Inspired by Professor Sachs' leadership, we strive to ensure that our university acts as an engine of positive change, fostering both scientific innovation and a deep commitment to the common. Our role as a founding member of the Sustainable Development Solutions Network Cyprus keeps us at the forefront of national efforts to advance the SDGs. This commitment is reflected in our performance in the Times Higher Education Impact Rankings, where we are ranked among the top 200 to 300 universities worldwide. For the second consecutive year, we are proud to be the only university in Cyprus to achieve this distinction. With over 2,150 institutions participating globally, this recognition is a powerful testament to our sustained commitment to the SDGs and our dedication in building a better future for all. Dear Professor Sachs, on behalf of the entire Frederick University community, I extend our deepest gratitude for accepting this honor and for your inspiring contributions to the global pursuit of a more sustainable, just, and prosperous future. We are truly privileged to welcome you into our academic community. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for honoring us with your presence tonight at this special ceremony for our university. Thank you very much.
I would now like to invite Professor Kostas Papanikolas, co-chair of the Cyprus Sustainable Development Solutions Network, to address this esteemed ceremony.
Excellencies, dear Rector and President of the Council of Frederick University, dear Professor Sachs, it is really a privilege to be here to address this extraordinary gathering for awarding a doctorate honoris causa to Professor Sachs. It is with profound pleasure and respect that I stand before you today to welcome Geoffrey Sachs to Cyprus as we gather to celebrate this remarkable event. Professor Sachs is not merely an internationally renowned economist. He's one of the towering intellectual figures of our times. He ranks, I would say, among the select group of leading contemporary figures, thinkers, along luminaries such as Noam Chomsky, Amartya Sen, Paul Krugman, Stieglitz, Piketty, and Asimoglu, shaping contemporary philosophy, thought, and political thinking. Through his illustrious career, Professor Sachs has played a pivotal role in shaping the philosophical and political understanding and policies, I would say, that govern the global landscape today. His profound insights into sustainable development, economic inequality, and the intricate interconnections between social progress and economic policy have inspired countless individuals and institutions around the world, this being one of them, Frederick University. His ideas, but also his concrete advice to numerous governments throughout the last, I would say, 40 years, has shaped, to no small degree, the world order that we live today. I don't mean to imply that he's responsible for the mess we live today. But certainly it would have been much worse if they didn't listen to the advice he provided. As a leading economist, an inspiring educator, a philosopher, and a political thinker, he perhaps embodies, more than anybody else, the archetype of what an intellectual leader means in the 21st century. One of Professor Sachs' most defining contributions, and there are many, in his exemplary leadership is the exemplary leadership of the Sustainable Development Solutions Network. Through this network, he has fostered meaningful collaborations among governments, business, academia, and civil society, focusing on innovative solutions to the pressing challenges of our time, including climate change, poverty alleviation, and social equity. The impact of this initiative, SDSN, has been profound as it seeks to mobilize the collective expertise of the global community toward achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I'm really privileged to co-chair alongside with the chair of the Council of this university that has Frederick, the small chapter of the SDSN Cyprus, and I hope this is another opportunity to engage this message with this esteemed audience here. In Cyprus, Professor Sachs is no stranger. He has been here several times, and he has made significant contributions that resonate deeply within our academic and civic community. His remarkable influence in persuading the government of Cyprus to support the establishment of the Cyprus Institute cannot be overstated. Over 20 years ago, this institution has become a vital hub of knowledge and innovation, enhancing our capacity to address multifaceted challenges we face today. Because, to no small degree, and to a large degree, of the steadfast support of leaders like Geoffrey Sachs. Moreover, in 2019, he played a leading role alongside with Laurent Fabius in advocating and succeeding in convincing the government of Cyprus to launch the Eastern Mediterranean Middle East Climate Change Initiative, a critical endeavor that has recently been revitalized and reaffirmed by President Christodoulidis, and especially in view of the coming presidency of the European Union by Cyprus in the first half of 2026. As we honor Professor Sachs today, we also recognize the strengthening of the bonds between Frederick University, a leading university in Cyprus, the leading university in Cyprus, as highlighted by the rector just now, in advancing the SDSN agenda. So this bond with Professor Sachs highlights the commitment of this university, I would say, of the SDSN Cyprus, but the whole society to our commitment for excellence, academic excellence in this case, peace, prosperity, and sustainable development. His induction into the academic community of Frederick University further cements his ties to Cyprus, inspiring future generations and scholars and policymakers, which are nurtured to a small degree within our university, the Frederick being a leading participant. In conclusion, let us take this opportunity to celebrate the extraordinary achievements of Professor Geoffrey Sachs. His relentless pursuit of knowledge, the unwavering commitment to social justice and peace, and visionary leadership continue to inspire us all. We are truly honored to have you with us today, Professor Sachs, and we eagerly anticipate your continued impact on our community and country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Papanikoulaou. I would now like to invite the Minister of Agriculture, Rural Development and Environment, Dr. Maria Panayiotou, to address the event on behalf of His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Cyprus.
Dear Rector, Frederick University, dear Professor Sachs, esteemed members of the academic community, dear students, ladies and gentlemen. Every honorary doctorate ceremony is a moment of academic and moral significance, even more so when it honors a person whose life's work has helped shape global through sustainability, equity, and peace. It is a sincere privilege to be here today, and an even greater one to represent the President of the Republic of Cyprus to this important event. It is also a moment of pride, both for Frederick University and for Cyprus, to welcome and distinguished voice in global development. Professor Sachs' contribution reminds us that small nations can be active participants in shaping solutions to global challenges. Academic distinction granted here reflects not only excellence, but also commitment to values that transcend borders. Professor Geoffrey Sachs is widely recognized as one of the leading economists and policy advisors of our time. He is a persistent advocate of the view that true development must be inclusive, just, and environmentally sustainable. For more than 2 decades, he has played a central role in global efforts to combat poverty, promote sustainable economic growth, and advance a cooperative model of globalization. He has advised a wide range of governments across continents and worked with major international organizations on some of the world's more pressing challenges, from debt crisis and public health to education, climate policy, and food security. What sets his work apart is not only its scale, but its coherence and moral clarity. In books such as The End of Poverty, The Age of Sustainable Development and Ethics in Action for Sustainable Development, he outlines an integrated, science-based, and ethically grounded roadmap for our shared future. He invites us to move beyond short-termism and adopt policies that combine social justice, ecological balance, and long-term prosperity. From 2002 to 2016, he served as director of the Earth Institute at Columbia University, and today he leads the Center for Sustainable Development at the same university. In his role as president of the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network and through other leadership positions in international bodies, he continues to influence global agendas in areas such as climate action, food systems, and sustainable nature and resource management, transforming knowledge into policy and policy impact. Professor Sachs currently holds the title of University Professor at Columbia University, and the highest academic distinction the institution confers. He has been honored with numerous awards, distinctions, and honorary degrees from institutions around the world. His publications, including several widely translated books, have helped shape modern debates on development, economics, and planetary responsibility. For us, at the Ministry of Agriculture, Rural Development and Environment, his work is not theoretical. It speaks directly to our mission: to manage land, water, agriculture, and ecosystems not merely as resources, but as pillars of well-being, inclusion, and resilience. His approach inspires a vision rooted in evidence, ethics, and responsibility towards future generations. Ladies and gentlemen, in a world marked of interlinked crises, from climate change to inequality, from biodiversity loss to food insecurity, Professor Sachs stands out as a clear and principled voice, a voice that insists on moving beyond slogans towards real systems change, a voice that reminds us that sustainable development is not an option. It is a prerequisite for justice, peace, and human survival. Professor Sachs, this honorary doctorate from Frederick University adds to a long and impressive list of global recognitions. But it is more than a personal distinction. It is a reflection of shared values, a reaffirmation of our collective pursuit of a better future. We thank you for your thought leadership, your tireless work, and your unwavering belief in humanity's ability to change course. As you so rightly put it, and I quote, "It is no longer good enough for economies simply to grow. We must also end extreme poverty, a goal within reach by 2030. We must manage the economy to protect rather than destroy the environment. And we must promote a fairer distribution of prosperity rather than a society divided between the very rich and the very poor. End of quote. This is the essence of sustainable development. Growth that leaves no one behind, that protects nature, and that builds a just and cohesive society. On behalf of the Republic of Cyprus, I extend my warmest congratulations and wish you continued strength and clarity in your vital work for the common good. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Panayiotou. To officially commence our ceremony, please rise for the formal entrance of the procession of the Rectorate and the Deans of the Schools of Frederick University. We extend our sincere gratitude to the Promethea String Quartet, whose presence we are delighted to have with us this evening, and whose musicians have graciously accompanied the ceremony. On stage we have Nikos Pittas and Iraklis Mitelas on the violin, Nicolas Papagiorini on the viola, and Stelios Pittas on the cello. Thank you very much. To present the remarkable work and lifelong contributions of today's honoree, I would like to invite Ms. Natasha Frederick, President of the Council of Frederick University and co-chair of the Cyprus Sustainable Development Solutions Network.
We have heard a lot tonight about Professor Sachs. I will say a few more. Distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, dear students and friends. Today we gather not only to confer an honorary doctorate, but also to honor a man whose ideas, voice and actions have shaped global thinking on what it means to build a better, more just and more sustainable world. It is a profound privilege to present Professor Jeffrey Sachs, recipient of this honorary doctorate, a visionary economist, distinguished academic, global leader, and tireless advocate for sustainable development and human dignity. Jeffrey Sachs was born in 1954 in Detroit, Michigan. Raised by his parents, Joan and Theodore Sachs, he was deeply influenced by their strong sense of social responsibility. His father, a labor lawyer, was especially known for his strong commitment to social justice, a value that deeply shaped Professor Sachs' own worldview. Professor Sachs' journey into the world of economics is rooted in a formative experience from his youth. During his sophomore year of high school, he traveled with his parents to the Soviet Union at the height of the Cold War. Confronted with a society so different from his own, he sensed, even at a young age, that he was witnessing something of paramount importance. The experience sparked in him two fundamental questions that would guide his life's work. What makes a good society, and why do societies differ so greatly in how they function? These questions became the compass of his extraordinary career, driving him to use the tools of economics not merely to understand the world, but to help solve its most pressing challenges. Inspired by the idea that an economist could serve society much like a doctor heals or a lawyer defends, he committed himself to a life of purpose through scholarship and action. His intellectual path led him to a distinguished academic career at Harvard University and later at Columbia University. Professor Sachs graduated summa cum laude from Harvard College in 1976. He continued his studies at Harvard University, earning both his MA and PhD in economics by 1980. His academic journey at Harvard was marked by his invitation to join the prestigious Harvard Society of Fellows while still a graduate student. Prior to joining Columbia University in 2002, he spent over 20 years at Harvard. Professor Sachs currently holds the title of University Professor at Columbia University, the university's highest academic rank. He serves as Director of the Center for Sustainable Development at Columbia University, where he previously served as Director of the Earth Institute for over a decade. Over the course of his career, he has advised dozens of heads of state and 3 United Nations Secretaries General, Kofi Annan, Ban Ki-moon, and Antonio Guterres, helping to shape the global agenda for fighting poverty, protecting the planet, and promoting peace. Professor Sachs has been a transformative force in the global effort for sustainable development. He played a fundamental role in shaping both the Millennium Development Goals and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, which were adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015, as a blueprint for building a greener, fairer, and better world by 2030. For him, the SDGs are not simply political commitments. They represent a moral contract with future generations, urging us to take responsibility for the world we leave behind. He is the president of the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network, SDSN, a remarkable global initiative under the auspices of the UN Secretary General. SDSN mobilizes the world's leading academic and research institutes and leverages their strength to help promote practical solutions to sustainable development challenges and realize the SDGs and the Paris Agreement. Professor Sachs, together with the former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, was instrumental in funding this initiative, which now spans 6 continents and comprises over 2,000 member institutions, including universities, research centers, and organizations from the private and public sectors. We, at Frederick University, are proud to be a member of SDSN and a founding member of SDSN Cyprus, a national chapter of this global network inspired by Professor Sachs' vision that education must not be confined within walls, but must serve humanity and the planet. His approach to sustainability is deeply interdisciplinary, deeply practical, and deeply ethical. It teaches us that to achieve sustainable development, we must transcend national borders, political oppositions, and short-term interests. We must recognize the earth as our shared home and act accordingly with cooperation, responsibility, and solidarity. Many know Professor Sachs as a brave voice in global affairs, speaking with clarity and conviction on complex geopolitical issues. This, too, is inseparable from his mission. For without peace, without dialogue, without global cooperation, sustainable development cannot be realized. Professor Sachs is, one might say, no stranger to sparking lively debate. As public intellectual who speaks with clarity and sometimes controversy on matters of geopolitics, his ideas often provoke discussions as much as admiration. In Cyprus, many people recognize his name and even more are familiar with his strong and distinctive voice on global issues. Yet, not everyone realizes that behind the bold headlines lies one of the world's most consistent, committed, and visionary advocates for sustainable development. His work reminds us that meaningful change requires both courageous ideas and difficult conversations, and he never shies away from either. The depth and breadth of his contributions have been recognized through awards and honors too numerous to list here. Among them, Professor Sachs is the 2022 recipient of the Thank Prize in Sustainable Development, has been awarded the Legion of Honors by decree of the President of the Republic of France, and the Order of the Cross from the President of Estonia. He was the co-recipient of the 2015 Blue Planet Prize, the leading global award for environmental leadership, has twice been named among the Times Magazine 100 most influential world leaders, and was ranked by The Economist as one of the top 3 most influential living economists. Professor Sachs always stresses the importance of universities in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, reflecting on how universities must embrace their role as agents of positive change. He emphasizes that universities, or panepistemio in Greek, a word that declares the universality of knowledge, meaning all knowledge, have the potential to bring together diverse disciplines in a shared mission, whether it's to fight poverty, grow food more efficiently, or decarbonize energy systems. The work being done in universities must not only serve academic excellence, but also reflect a global mission to address our planet's most pressing challenges. Professor Sachs' leadership and commitment to engage universities in the pursuit of the SDGs have inspired institutions around the world to take meaningful action. At Frederick University, we are proud to be one such example. His efforts have profoundly influenced our approach to education, encouraging us not only to equip our students with knowledge and skills, but also to nurture their ethical leadership, compassion, and sense of global responsibility. Beyond his academic and policy work, Professor Sachs has also been a pioneer in bringing ethical reflection into the center of sustainable development. In 2021, Pope Francis appointed him to the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences, a distinguished body dedicated to the advancement of human dignity and the common good. Professor Sachs has been a frequent contributor to the Vatican's work on education, ethics, and sustainability, recognizing that spiritual and moral leadership must be allies to scientific and policy efforts. In 2022, Professor Sachs co-edited the book Ethics in Action for Sustainable Development, bringing together interfaith leaders and scholars to build an ethical foundation for sustainable development. With a foreword by Pope Francis and Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew, the book highlights that sustainable development is not just a technical goal, but a moral imperative grounded in our shared humanity. Today, we reflect with deep respect on the recent passing of Pope Francis, whose profound vision for a more just and sustainable world inspired countless individuals, including Professor Sachs. What I find particularly remarkable is that despite the enormous challenges that he witnesses, environmental degradation, inequality, conflict, and the slow progress towards achieving the SDGs, Professor Sachs remains anchored in hope. Hope rooted not in a naive optimism, but in a deep and rational belief in the human capacity for cooperation, creativity, and compassion. Through his books, his public service, and his leadership, he calls upon us, educators, policymakers, students, and citizens to live up to the responsibility of our time. He teaches us that sustainable development is not only achievable, it is essential, and that the moral arc of history bends towards sustainability if we have the courage and the wisdom to act. Today, as we honor Professor Sachs with the title of Honorary Doctor of Frederick University, we celebrate a vision of leadership that combines brilliance with humility, advocacy with action, and knowledge with hope.
We now invite Professor Michael Komodromos, Vice Rector for Research, Development and International Relations, to read the official resolution of the Senate of Frederick University conferring the title of Honorary Doctor upon Professor Sachs.
Resolution. Upon decision by the Senate and confirmation by the Council of Frederick University, because Dr. Jeffrey D. Sachs, a distinguished scholar and university professor, whose pioneering research and scholarly work in sustainable development, global economics, and social justice, as well as his unwavering and multifaceted contribution to education, has greatly advanced the global academic community. The Senate and the Council of Frederick University have resolved to bestow upon him the highest honor within their jurisdiction, to confirm upon him the title of Honorary Doctor of Frederick University, and to report this resolution on parchment to be read by the Vice Rector for Research, Development and International Relations, and presented to him by the Rector on the day of his conferment ceremony in the city of Nicosia on the 2nd of May 2025.
It is now time for the formal conferral of the honorary doctorate. I invite the Rector of Frederick University, Professor George Demosthenes, to proceed with the investiture of Professor Jeffrey Sachs with the academic gown.
As the Senate of Frederick University has deemed Professor Jeffrey D. Sachs worthy of being conferred the title of Honorary Doctor of Frederick University, and the University Council has unanimously confirmed this decision, I, Professor George Demosthenes, Rector of Frederick University, do hereby publicly confirm upon Professor Jeffrey D. Sachs the title of Honorary Doctor of Frederick University, and grant him all the privileges that derive from this prestigious academic distinction.
It's nice to get dressed in public. And it's wonderful to be among friends and people that I admire. I'm profoundly grateful to Frederick University, to the president, the rector, to all the deans, the faculty, the students, for this great honor and for welcoming my wife, Sonia, and me so warmly and so much part of the family. And we feel very much part of the family of Frederick University, and the family of Cyprus, I must say. I'm also deeply grateful to Dr. Kostas Papanikolas, a world-renowned physicist, for first bringing us to Cyprus a quarter century ago in the founding moments of Cyprus Institute, and for showing us the wonders of your country, the beauties of this region, and for inspiring me and inspiring Sonia with your leadership. So for me, today is a great honor, but it's really a celebration of Frederick University and a celebration of Cyprus, the other great institutions of this country. And that's why I'm so thrilled to be here. Let me say that if you are a scholar anywhere in the world, fundamentally you are part of the Greek community. You invented this stuff. And I came to understand that step by step over the last 50 years. I didn't quite know it at the beginning. But the truth is that all of the ideas, the idea that knowledge should be for practical purposes, the ideas of using rationality to understand the world and to also try to redress the challenges of the world, the idea that human engagement, even politics, is a matter of ethics. These are all Greek ideas, fundamentally so. And as you mentioned, Madam President, my favorite word is pan-epistemo. Your word for university, but for me, exactly the concept of knowledge coming together, of all knowledge being pulled together for a human purpose. I consider myself an Aristotelian. That's my ethical perspective. I find it completely remarkable that that guy, 2,300 years ago, wrote the best ever book on ethics. It was the first and the best, the Nicomachean Ethics. He wrote the first and the best ever book on political science. He had a good teacher, and The Republic's really a wonderful book. But The Politics is really the best and the first book of political science. And the genius of Aristotle was to say that ethics and political science are two conjoined volumes. They go together. The Nicomachean Ethics ends in its chapter 10 by saying, now we turn to politics. And that's the beginning of the politics. That idea is not the way that politics is sometimes seen. But it is the most important idea that we have in the world. And ethics for the Greeks, the ancient Greeks, was not some highfalutin concept of rules and principles. It was a very practical discipline of how to live to produce the kind of eudaimonia, the kind of happiness and thriving that we need. So it was very much grounded, very much down to earth, very much based on the most remarkable perspicacious observations of human nature and human flaws and how to cultivate the better side of our human nature, and how to use that both at the individual level and at the community level, at the level of the polis, at the level of the political community, to produce the outcomes that we need. I also have to tell you something very practical also about the inspiration of the ancient Greeks. When you are an economic advisor, as I am, you fail 9 times out of 10. You give advice, it's ignored, it's rejected. Most philosophers in history are rather frustrated in their pursuits. Another great philosopher of all time, Confucius, went kingdom to kingdom. Nobody listened. For all his life, he finally sat down with his disciples at the age of 70, and from there came the Analects of Confucius and 2,500 years of Chinese civilization emerged from that, but from failure. When I look at the greatest of all thinkers of history, I am profoundly encouraged by the fact that Plato failed every time he served as an economic advisor. You may know that Plato tried 3 times to advise the Syracusan government. Once he was almost sold into slavery, and he escaped at the last moment. But do you know how heartening it is to know that Plato also failed so many times? This is about the best inspiration in life one can have, actually. It gives you license to think, to argue, to discuss, not to expect necessarily you succeed or you win the argument or you carry the day, but that you have a chance to try your best to be right, to be accurate, to be constructive. And I think that that is our obligation. Thank you for mentioning Pope Francis, who the world buried a few days ago. And just to mention one point about the Catholic Church and this great honor that I have to be an academician in the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences. They too are Aristotelians, and that's in a literal sense. Of course, there's Christology and theology as well, but I'm sure that you know that the Catholic social teachings, formally, which were in their modern variant, initiated in 1891 by Pope Leo XIII in an encyclical called Rerum Novarum, which means the new things, and he meant the new things of the industrial age, explicitly looked back to St. Thomas Aquinas. St. Thomas Aquinas was 750 years ago a professor at the University of Paris. And what was Aquinas' mission in life? It was to take Aristotelian wisdom and combine it with Christian theology and Christian ethics. And so St. Thomas Aquinas was at the core an Aristotelian, and the modern Catholic social teachings at the core are Aristotelian. And I can tell you that this is also literally the case because the former chancellor of the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences, a wonderful bishop and a remarkable philosopher named Marcelo Santos Sorondo, who inducted me into the academy, would sit next to me at every meeting. And whenever anyone said almost anything intelligent, he'd lean over to me and said, Aristotle said that. This would be the constant refrain. And we feel that, so we're trying to apply this grand 2,350-year-old knowledge tradition to the challenges of our time. I regard sustainable development, and I'm so grateful that Frederick University has taken this to the core of the curriculum, to the core of the mission of the university, to the core of the practical training and design, including in the policy lab of the university for very practical training of students. I regard this idea of sustainable development to be the best we have in our time to guide us into what we should be doing to make a world of eudaimonia, to make a world of human thriving. And sustainable development entails 4 interconnected ideas. And like Aristotle, it is teleological. There is a telos, there is a purpose, and sustainable development says that our purpose is to achieve material well-being, social justice, environmental sustainability, and peace and cooperation. These are the 4 pillars. There are 2 critical senses for me about sustainable development. One is that it is an aspirational idea. It is a telos. It is an aim that I believe is not only justified, but is adopted formally by all 193 member states of the United Nations. The second is, it is a way of thinking. It is a systematic science, in my view, but it's a science that is just being born. It is not typically, and never was in the 20th century, a department or a degree or a way to organize the curriculum. It's new, but it's new because it fits the needs of an age where the scale of human activity, the size of the economy, is physically wrecking the planet on the one hand, and the institutions that we have are creating inequalities that are so startling they have never been before seen on the scale that we have them, where one person, whom we can call informally our Prime Minister, Elon Musk, has a net wealth of $300 billion, and 1 billion people today struggle to survive today on the planet. And so sustainable development has become our real challenge. Can we use the know-how that we have, the technology that we have, which is brilliant and breakthrough in every way, advancing at a pace unimaginable even just a few years ago with all the advances of computation and artificial intelligence? Can we use this rationally and ethically to build a future that is worthy of human beings and that can keep us safe and provide the kind of future that every parent and every grandparent in the world wants for their children and their grandchildren? And to my mind, that is the purpose of sustainable development as a system of thought, as a field of analysis. And in that sense, it's a field of systems thinking that combines Earth systems, engineered systems, political systems, economic systems, and ethics into a formal integrative framework. And in this sense, we need to rebuild how we teach, how we train, because this is something different, and it is something new, and it is something extraordinarily exciting. It's also something new for our governments. Our governments all over the world need massive retooling to be able to achieve collectively in our world the kind of objectives that we have set, that we need, and that we depend on achieving. There's nothing automatic about sustainable development. There is no invisible hand that will guide us magically to a world that is prosperous, socially just, environmentally sustainable, and at peace. Far from it. Not one of these objectives is secure at this point. Our institutional framework globally, our nation-state system, our market system, does not deliver sustainable development. We need rethinking, we need retooling, we need redesign. And let me mention, from a political point of view, two fundamental aspects of this. One is that governments need to learn to think in an integrated and long-term manner, longer than the political cycle, longer than the social media 1 hour cycle, longer than a TikTok post. This is hard, maybe even becoming harder in our world. But governments need to be able to think at a scale of 20 years, 30 years, and they need to be able to do that in engineered systems of energy and water and physical infrastructure and transport and digital connectivity and precision agriculture, and put these pieces together in a sound, rigorous, scientifically based and engineering based way. Most governments are not capable of this. My own government in the United States thinks at the time horizon of about an hour now. There is no planning. We don't even know what the next hour will bring. And for other governments, not quite as extreme in that, because it's hard to be more extreme than the US. We call ourselves exceptional, and indeed we are. Governments generally lack that long-term thinking. There's a second dimension of sustainable development that is essential for governments. And this is absolutely difficult and paramount for Cyprus. And that is regional cooperation and regional peace. I can tell you as an economist, you trade with your neighbors. We have in economics something called the gravity equation, which means that the amount of trade between two economies is the product of their sizes divided by the distance squared. It's an empirical relationship that looks like the gravity equation, and so we call it the gravity theory of trade. But the point is, countries trade with their neighbors, countries share ecosystems with their neighbors, countries share fisheries with their neighbors, countries need to connect in energy systems with their neighbors, because if it's cloudy here, it's sunny someplace else, and you want the transmission grid to be sharing those green electrons in a larger geographic space. Well, as you know very well, and maybe no country has been more at the center of the clash of empires throughout history than Cyprus. I think you probably are number one. Every major empire has visited, by my count, from the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Umayyads, Byzantines, up to the British, the Americans, and everyone else. you've been visited by everybody. Because you've got some wonderful real estate, by the way. And so everybody wants to come and visit. They don't all get to have an honorary degree, so they come and try to take something. This is a ground reality of your geography at the crossroads of Europe and Asia and Africa and the Middle East. You are unique, and your place in history has been unique because of this as well. But this case for diplomacy is of fundamental importance, as difficult as it is. And here is where I believe we must be speaking out every day. Peace is the absolute precondition of sustainable development. Peace is the precondition of economic prosperity. Peace is the precondition of social justice. There is no higher calling than peace. And that means that we have a very urgent task. You're in a region of conflict. You're beset by a long-term, deeply entrenched, extraordinarily painful conflict. Nearby is a war raging in Ukraine. Next door is a genocide underway caused by Israeli intransigence and unacceptance of two states that would honor the Palestinian cause and the Israeli people. And we need to resolve this for the sake of those who are most afflicted and those who are suffering the shocks from afar and from an entire world that is endangered by these conflicts. One of the aspects of my work that I would like to just share with you is that I've had the experience and the good fortune to be advisor to governments on all sides of all of these conflicts, all of them. I was an advisor to President Gorbachev 35 years ago. I was an advisor to President Yeltsin. I was an advisor to President Kuchma of Ukraine. I advised Mrs. Erdogan on her program for circular economy and zero waste, which is an initiative of the First Lady of Turkey. I began visiting Israel 53 years ago, in 1972. I have worked with Palestinians for many decades. Some of my closest, brilliant colleagues, Professor Rashid Khalidi and others, have been champions of the Palestinian cause and have helped me to understand also deep injustices and the historical roots of these conflicts. What I have learned from all of this is that dialogue, negotiation, mutual respect, above all, talking across the divides is the most essential skill that we have for making peace. And we must meet each other with the dignity and imparting the dignity of human beings confronting deeply painful issues, but with mutual respect. There is no such thing as one side good and the other side evil. There is a world caught up in intractable conflicts and with instincts and pain and emotion that make it very difficult to resolve these conflicts, but they must be resolved. And we must find ways to avoid the continuing spirals of violence, because unlike all of the wars of the past, we are in the nuclear age when one mistake will end the world. And believe me, if you've advised as I have more than 100 governments around the world, you know they are capable of mistakes. Honestly. To know them is not to feel comfortable at night. To know them is to say, stop fighting, talk. It means for Europe to speak with President Putin. It means for Europe to not shun negotiations. It means when there is intransigence to say no, intransigence is unacceptable. There must be a way to resolve these issues before we all end up in disaster. Let me just conclude by thanking Frederick University for taking up the cause of sustainable development in your core mission and in your central focus. This involves new organization of knowledge. It truly calls for pan-epistemio. There isn't a discipline that is outside of sustainable development. For 25 years, students have asked me, what should I study if I want to be engaged in sustainable development? And I tell them, anything that interests you, but understand the broad context. Understand the interconnections. Because if you are in healthcare, as my wife is, if you are in climate science, if you are in energy systems, if you are in architecture, if you are in diplomacy, in any of these fields, you are in sustainable development. And the key is to understand your part of this interconnected system of systems thinking. We've been speaking today about one idea that I have been developing with the wonderful friends here called Ages of Globalization, to try to help our students understand the interconnected world and understand climate, institutions, and the science, the ways forward. And it did dawn on me, ladies and gentlemen, probably uniquely, of all the places in the world, you can tell the whole story of human history right here to help people understand this interconnected world, this interconnection of geopolitics, the interconnection of trade, the interconnection of diplomacy, of risks of conflict, of environmental challenge, of sustainability. You not only have the wisdom and the civilizational depth, a term that I heard for the first time last week and that I really like. You have a very deep civilizational depth to the core that you can draw upon. But you have before your eyes in this wondrous place everything to observe and to inspire the way forward. So I'm absolutely grateful to Frederick University for taking on this great challenge. Especially thrilled to be part of your family. Absolutely am committed to join you on this journey in any way that I can. And to all of you, my deep gratitude. Thank you.
We have now reached the end of the ceremonial part of the event. We will open the floor for a brief 15 minutes discussion with the audience. Kindly wait for the microphone to be passed to you and state your name and affiliation before your question.
My name is Mike Efthimiou. I'm Professor of Engineering at the University of Western Australia. I would like to ask a question on climate change and related to sustainability. There is an urgency to reduce emissions of CO2. We all know why. And it is important, therefore, to make the energy transition away from fossil fuels to more sustainable. Over the last 2 or 3 years, there has been some significant advances in the way that electric cars work. Advances also, I would say, in photovoltaic. Most of these advances are coming from China. The world should be embracing all of these and taking them on. And my question is, does it make sense to be putting significant tariffs on these products?
My favorite subject. There is nothing about the tariffs that makes sense. So I could stop there. There are many purported justifications of Trump's policy, but it must be a very deeply held secret because there is no analysis at all that justifies the particular approach of the United States, which in any event changes by the hour. This is a very peculiar situation. And I should explain one basic point. How can one person overturn the World Trade System? This by itself should open eyes. This is not a vote by Congress. This is a decree by one person. The answer is Trump is acting unconstitutionally. But because of the failures of our political system, he is able to do so at least temporarily. And the reason essentially is the following. He has declared a national emergency. This, as you know, is not a very democratic act to begin with, but we have sprinkled throughout our legislation the word emergency. And that's because the U.S. is an imperial state and it built in some of the very bad behavior of imperial states, including the idea that the security state must come first, and therefore there can be emergencies that the president can rule by decree. Well, all of that is a bad idea to begin with, very dangerous, but Trump's declaration of an emergency is obviously utterly contrived. Is it an emergency to run a trade deficit that you've been running 20 years? Not exactly. Maybe it's a policy mistake, maybe it's the result of some other bad policies, but it's not an emergency that enables you to throw out the Constitution. There are dozens of lawsuits now by companies saying, we don't pay those tariffs, we don't accept these tariffs coming from a decree, because if you read the US Constitution, Article 1, Section 8 says that the ability to levy tariffs is exclusively congressional, not presidential. So whether this actually stands or not also remains to be seen, and exactly what the policy is changing all the time. But let me go to a different part of your question, and that is China. China is a remarkable civilization. Let's say that China has civilizational depth as well. China was unified in the year 221 BC, and unlike the Western Roman Empire, which ended in 476 AD, China's unitary state, though it was broken on occasion, basically has existed for 2,200 years. China is a remarkable, wonderful civilization. China for hundreds of years did not go to war with its neighbors. China has never, despite its size and its predominance, never invaded Japan, for example. Rather stunning, because in this part of the world, every neighbor has invaded each other dozens of times. In the Western idea, because the Roman state ended 1,500 years ago, the idea of open conflict as the natural way of statecraft exists still today, even when we teach international relations. It's an anarchic world. This idea is completely foreign to Chinese international relations, which is based on the idea of a Confucian harmony, not on an anarchy. And for me, very interestingly, China from the year 1368, which was the beginning of the Ming Dynasty, to 1839, when Britain invaded China for the great cause to force China to accept opium. Wonderful, wonderful imperial initiative. For that 500 years, China never lifted a finger against Korea, never against Japan, and for 17 years, from 1410 to 1427, there was a skirmish with Vietnam. Other than that, 6 centuries ago, never. So the whole idea that China is this great threat to the US and Europe is a preposterous idea that fundamentally arises from the Western mindset of anarchy, the Western idea, Greek word, hegemony, the idea of being a hegemon. By the way, it is true that democratic states not only are not immune to the impulse of hegemony, the greatest democracy of the ancient world, Athens, was absolutely imperialistic. The greatest democracy of the 19th century, Britain, defines imperial domination and war. And the United States, as a fragile democracy today, is an empire as well, and a not very attractive one in its foreign policy, unfortunately. So I view the whole antipathy to China as a basis from a competitive zero-sum mindset, which is a misreading of the world, from bigotry and from ignorance, which usually go together. And that is why we think China is an enemy. There is no other reason, in my view, than that. Now, China is much more systematic in its governance than the United States, for example. Sonia and I have been going to China since 1981, so for 44 years. We've watched meticulously, year by year, how China went from poverty to the cutting edge of world technology. They've done it through extraordinarily hard work, extraordinarily diligent investment, very high saving rates, massive education, hundreds of thousands of top degrees every year being given across the country. So they've earned their recovery from a disastrous century at the hands of the European empires, the United States, and Japan. No thank you. They were invaded several times. They don't want to be invaded again. They don't want to be broken apart again. They decided 10 years ago in a program called Made in China 2025 that electric vehicles was very important for the future, that digital technologies were extremely important, that precision agriculture was extremely important. They listed 10 classes of technology that they said by 2025 we want to excel in, to be world competitive in. And they essentially accomplished the objective through systematic investment, very hard work, very clear 10-year policy directives. So today, China is the lead producer of most of the green digital technologies in the world. During this period, the core of European industry, which is the German automotive industry, said, we produce wonderful internal combustion engines, the best in the world, absolutely true. So we'll continue to do that, thank you. Mercedes-Benz and Daimler and Volkswagen and others didn't move anywhere near the pace that they should have. So China now leads electric vehicles in the world. They are the best, they're the lowest cost, they're highly competitive. The US uses a new word, that China has overcapacity. This is an absurdity. The US, yes, under capacity. That's true. But China does not produce more than the world needs. China is producing a fraction of what the world needs for a successful transformation. China has the capacity of about 1,300 gigawatts of solar module production each year. About half of that is sold right now. The other half is desperately needed if the world's going to succeed in the energy transformation. We shouldn't be trying to stop China from doing this. We should be partnering with China. The US, honestly, they haven't read Aristotle. This is the basic. They don't get it. But Europe can do better. Europe should propose to China a partnership. You have the Belt and Road Initiative. We have the Global Gateway. Let's work together. We invest from west to east. You invest from east to west. We meet in Samarkand, and we unite Eurasia in a green and digital future. This is how Europe would prosper, would succeed, would regain what Europe should have, which is dynamism economically and technologically. Don't follow the US into the mess. This is my real advice. You are part of Eurasia. It happens that on the other side of Eurasia, you have a very dynamic partner. Work together, and you can bring Eurasia, which is the core of the world economy, into the high technology, digital, and green era. And this is what should be done.
I think we have time maybe for a question or two.
Yes, excuse me for moving slowly, but the next place where I start now. First of all, let me welcome you to Cyprus. It's a great honor to have someone like you here and deliver a macro approach to the issue of the environment. I thank you and congratulations for getting this honorary degree. I thank Frederick University for giving me this publication today. And I have a question. Politics are local. We are in Anglaja now. My name is George Constantin Anayotou. I come from a very small village in the center of the island, a very green forest on the mountain. The river Pidiar had 4 villages in ancient Tamarsos, the area that's called Tamarsos, the heart of producing cover in Cyprus. My village is called Peraorini, that means across the river. The other 3 villages are called Politico, Ergates for the workers, and the other one is called Vera, across the river. And the other one is called Episcopio, for the priests. So, all politics are local. You gave us a macro approach, where the environment is, where is this going, etc. Thank you very much for this. I would like to hear your views on the micro level. In Aglanja, last night I was with my driver. I have a driver because I can't drive, because of my condition. I told him I'm going to this, but I have someone else to drive me. He said, why this is so important? Because it's Jeffrey Sachs. So the question is, in Aglanja, when he was driving me around where his house is, I saw garbage cans, like 3/4 of the garbage can, covered by garbage. Covered, you couldn't see the can, the garbage can. My driver is a garbage truck driver at night. He works for the government. And in the morning and night, he's done his job. So I tried to explain what you will cover in your speech, that I thought, which is exactly what you did. My question is, how do you give incentives to locals, like in Aglanja, not to buy garbage bags from the supermarket that are much cheaper than what the government is giving them, selling them actually, and have the incentive not to throw this a can. I mean, if they get arrested, that's a big problem, right? So how do they do it?
Thank you for the
Yeah.
question. I think it's clear.
Yeah. So
Professor
I
Sachs.
hope it's clear, Dr. Sachs,
It
that
is.
I'm really worrying about the micro aspect and how it incentivizes people in the world of uncertainty. Big uncertainty with risk and incentives, not share optimally between. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let me say that many places have successfully addressed the question of single-use plastics, of actually shopping bags and so forth. We go to some places that are absolutely devoid of the kind of refuse that you would see in other places. So first point is that there are solutions. And there can be certain kinds of incentives or regulation or pricing and so on. This is a perfect topic for a student assignment. This is a wonderful topic for a group of students to take on and do. Find a zipper here so I can get. Yes. Frederick University Living Lab. So the university has exactly a practicum so that students can grapple with the kind of challenge that you've just defined. It's a perfect project, by the way, because it is analytical. They can study other experience. They can read the literature about this. They can do a survey of local population. They can look at the sources of this garbage, whether it is the plastic bags or other things, and then they can argue for a certain kind of approach, maybe even do a trial project in one of the 4 villages and compare it with a baseline control group in another village to see whether it works. So thank you very much. Good assignment.
Hello, sir. I am an economist by training. You were a little optimistic, I saw in your tone, about what Europe can do to follow its own path. But can you explain to us, we are a relatively small place here to understand, how can 27 leaders elected through a democratic process, convincing people that they are worthy to be leaders, they meet to find a good reason to relax the budget constraints. They look at the environment, they look at income inequality that leads to right-wing extremism, and they find that the reason why they want to relax the constraint is to rearm, because the probability of Russia invading Europe is greater than environmental disaster or the threats from income inequality. And there is a very clear deficit of leadership, not just at the level of heads of state, but of European institutions. How do you explain that? And how can anybody be optimistic that we will come to that point people with chartered independent course say that maybe, I don't want to cite examples, but Iraq is one where the press was telling us nobody said there were no weapons of mass destruction until we knew there was. So, and similarly now. Thank you.
Do we have an hour or two? Let me start quickly, maybe 4 or 5 minutes if possible. Iraq. The war in Iraq was not a war under faulty premises. It was a war under false premises. It was based on lies, not on mistakes. The US government lied because it actually tested how can we convince the American people for war. And in the fall of 2002, they even did focus groups, and they determined that weapons of mass destruction would be just the thing to scare the American public. They are liars. This is a basic point. It's not a great innovative thought, but I just want you to know this was not a mistake. Oh my, there were no weapons of mass destruction. This was a lie. Not the first time an empire lies for a living, but one needs to be trained a bit to understand that's a lie. And that was. And we need to stop the lying. We need to stop the secrecy. We need to stop this great confidentiality, which is just a cover for lying. So this is just a side note on this. In substance, Europe does not need $800 billion of armaments. Europe needs to send a senior official to discuss with Foreign Minister Lavrov or President Putin how to end this in a mutually satisfactory way. Europe has no diplomacy right now. There is no diplomacy. You can meet 100 times with Zelensky, but that's not diplomacy. Diplomacy is to meet once with President Putin, which has not happened since February 2022. This is a shame. Now, President Trump has actually opened up diplomacy between the US and Russia, and Europe's answer was no way, except let us be at the table. And my feeling is that's absurd. If Europe wants to negotiate, you don't need to ask permission of the United States. You ask to have a meeting. That's all. I know the Russian leadership, much of it, not all of it. They'll meet, they'll discuss. You won't like some things, you will hear things that are surprisingly good in terms of reaching agreements. You'll get a better understanding of issues, and maybe you'll be able to sort your way through. But you can't do it if your High Representative Vice President spews Russophobia every day and says we arm for war, but we don't have diplomacy because diplomacy is appeasement or diplomacy is failure. This is a completely wrong idea. So this is first basic point. It's a lot cheaper to get a plane ticket to a meeting than $800 billion of armaments. There is really also a very complicated, hours-long discussion to have, seriously, about how Europe functions right now. Europe is not, of course, it's not a federation. It's a very, very loose confederation of 27 states. And in our world today, I believe that's not the best way to be organized. You're surrounded by big players. Russia is one of them. You're more likely to be invaded, by the way, by the United States than by Russia. And that's not a joke, because one day the United States may land 50,000 troops in Greenland and say it's ours. Because actually, Russia's not threatening to invade Europe, but the United States is rather explicit about it. It's not implicit. The president is saying Greenland must be ours. That's Danish territory. Take it seriously, by the way, I'm sorry to say, because it could easily happen. Oh, we sighted a Chinese submarine in the Arctic Sea. We must have Greenland. This is vital for our national security. It wouldn't take much to provoke this. So Europe cannot thrive as 27 completely independent countries, even if there is a somewhat functioning common market and even a monetary union. This is very tricky, because since Europe is not really functioning very well right now, the political response across Europe is less Europe, not more Europe. Because how could you argue for more Europe when it's not even functioning right now? And so the politics is that, my God, why should we be trapped by Brussels? It makes no sense. We need our own freedom of action. Believe me, in a world of China, Russia, India, the United States, you don't want to be 27 countries alone. You don't. You really do want to be Europe with 450 million people. I'm sorry to say, but yes, a nuclear deterrence, which France has, and which can be a European-wide deterrence. Yes, and a European defense, which is correct, though it doesn't need this kind of panic $800 billion to bring about. So it raises a very big, difficult question. How do you get there to what Europe should be? And honestly, I'd like to tell you the full story that I have in my mind about this. We don't have time. Don't kill me if I try to. But I'll tell you just one interesting fact. In 1776, there were 13 British colonies on the eastern coast of North America. And they got together to rebel against the British Empire. And France came to their aid in 1778, and the British in 1781 said, okay, we don't want to continue to fight the French, because without the French there would have been no victory, and they signed a peace agreement. At the end of that, there were 13 sovereign states. There wasn't the United States of America. There were 13 countries, not one. And they operated under something like the Lisbon Treaty. You needed unanimity. There was no ability to tax at the center. There was no foreign policy. So they operated very much like Europe operates today. And that went on for 6 years, from 1781 to 1787. And then a very clever political entrepreneur, who was a Virginian large landowner and a brilliant young man named James Madison, said, we need a government. We can't exist as a confederation. And he convinced the 13 independent countries to go to a convention in Philadelphia in the summer of 1787, ostensibly to amend the Articles of Confederation. They never did that. They wrote a new constitution. And that constitution was adopted, and a federal government was created out of nothing beforehand. And they created the idea of a president and a Congress and a Supreme Court. It's a rather clever document for 1787, by the way. And they studied the Greeks, and they studied the Roman experience, and they used ancient knowledge and Montesquieu to come up with this. Europe needs to reform its institutions to be more Europe in an adequate way. Because if everything depends on unanimity, you can't actually manage successfully in a world where you're pulled by much larger powers than any of the 27. And it will be chaotic unless there is a well-functioning Europe. It seems like a distant dream right now, but I think that if responsible political leaders, not warmongers, as in Brussels right now, because this is not the approach, not panic, but logical thinking says we need to strengthen our capacity to negotiate with the United States, to negotiate with Russia, to negotiate with China, to negotiate with India. We need that, and we don't have it right now. And there was thoughtful reform. This would make a huge benefit for all of Europe. Thank you.
I think that everyone will have some time during the reception of discussing other matters with you. Dear guests, as we come to the close of this exceptional evening, we thank you all for your presence here today. On behalf of Frederick University, we once again extend our sincerest congratulations to Professor Jeffrey Sachs and our heartfelt gratitude to all who have honored us with their presence this evening. Before inviting you to join us for a reception, please rise as the procession of our honoree, the rectorate, and the deans leave the room.
Gracias.